Thank you, Mac. It was nice. They took down the big lectern so I could actually see all of you. So I give you high marks for that. That's a great one. It is wonderful to be here today, and I'm really looking forward to having some questions and having some interaction with everyone here. I have such an admiration for the Rotary Club and what you stand for, especially this strong ethic of service to your communities. You bring people together in community, and you extend that community. And of course, I think that just dovetails so well with University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Charlotte. All of the universities in the system carry with them this deep, deep belief that our mission is to serve the state and to educate the workforce of the future, to do the discoveries that advance the state, and to serve in the public good. So it's wonderful to be here, and I know we probably have some people that are associated with UNC Charlotte here today too, and so I say it's great to have people from one of our sister universities. I thought I'd ask how many people are here that went to Chapel Hill or had students, kids that went to Chapel Hill? Okay, so that's a pretty big group. How many of you knew someone that went to Chapel Hill? I'm going to get you all. There's going to be someone that might have gone to another blue school that's going to have to raise their hand. Has heard of Chapel Hill. No. And, you know, it is an amazing privilege to be a chancellor at UNC Chapel Hill, but I believe for all of my colleagues who are chancellors or presidents of universities right in this particular era, one of the things we all know is that the only thing is that is certain is that it's uncertain. So I go back to my first invitation here, which I think was to speak to you on August 21st, but a certain statue was toppled on the 20th of August, and I was unable to make it, and I'm scheduled to speak today, and yesterday we had a presentation at the Board of Trustees for our plan to move forward, and I'm going to be happy to talk about that, and I know you'll have questions. It'll give us an opportunity to really talk. But one of the things that I think is really important when we look at what goes on in universities is that we are so complex. We are running in so many different avenues. We're educating students. We're doing great research. We're working in our communities. We're having sports teams. We have all sorts of philanthropic arms. And we have to keep remembering that we work together in the common good. And that's why it's such a privilege to be a part of UNC Chapel Hill and of what I believe is the outstanding system in the nation, the University of North Carolina system. This is a big week for us. There's always a big week, and I was glad to see a picture of Mac Brown. It was a wonderful opportunity for us to welcome Mac back. You know, and if you look at universities frequently, something like a change in a coaching position is often a very difficult situation for universities, and there are two reasons that this one went so well, and one of them is that Larry Fedora is an incredibly gracious and fine man, and he handled this so well. He had built a team that had great spirit, and so some of the things that accompany a change in a tough business where many things count were not ours, and he was being succeeded by an amazing person who is also such a gracious, wonderful, high character person coming into the community, and that transition has been quite exciting. Tonight, Mac's actually going through his induction into the Hall of Fame, and then he'll be coming back. He's already working. He's on board with his wife, Sally, but I know many of you probably know them. So it was a wonderful opportunity to have them back. You know, and that whole athletic aspect of our university is really important. More than 1 million people visit our campus every year because they come back to see athletic events. And then they do so many other things. And it's so important that we learn the lessons on how to do that right. I certainly dealt quite extensively with the NCAA in my first years here. But if you're going to take these opportunities to really grow, I think we have done that. Every single time we have something that comes at us, we have to embrace it and move forward. When I went just on Sunday, the women's soccer team under Anson Dorrance was fighting for, I think it's 22nd or 23rd national championship. And you know, 3 seconds away from winning it, because that's what it took for them to get that darn goal that they shouldn't have gotten. But you know, that was an amazing event. Mac was there, Roy Williams was there, Jenny Levy was there, Karen Sheldon, who had just won a national championship, was there. The coaches and the entire group support each other. And what was even better were that all the students, and I'm going to talk about the athletes, from all areas were there, because it is a community where people want to help each other and bolster each other's success. So those are the kinds of things that I have the real honor to see every day. We have, and we are at a very exciting time in our history, and that is because we have come together around the blueprint for next. When I first came, we had what happens at many universities, and I know there's some faculty and others from UNC Charlotte, they'll understand that. That is that every place is always thinking about the future. And I used to kid around and say there was a strategic plan even for the second floor South building. So it wasn't that people weren't planning. Everybody is planning. You aren't a great teacher and you're not a great researcher if you are not thinking about the future all the time. But what we had not done was taken the real work to try to coordinate that, so we were all understanding what were the key principles that were guiding us forward as we were making decisions that could help us be the great university we are and see ourselves move forward. So we brought together everybody, we took a time to do it right, and we created this Blueprint for Next, which was the first strategic planning framework for UNC Chapel Hill. And you'll probably all appreciate, many of you have probably done your own strategic plans in your businesses, it fits on one page. That is unusual for universities. I say it again, it fits on one page. And that's because it was almost easy for us to say we know who we are and what we need to be. And the first has two pillars. One is to be of and for the public, that we serve in the public good, and that includes a major commitment to making sure that this university stays affordable, accessible, and excellent for generations of students. And I'll come back to that, because that is really a very critical piece of how we also serve the state of North Carolina. And it has other pieces within that. One of them is trying to be the open space of democracy, where we work with our students to deal with the difficult issues of the day, which we all are wrestling with, I certainly am, in a way that can actually help move those conversations forward. The second pillar is innovation made fundamental. And that is where we see our role is to be leaders in discovery and bringing things back to this state and to the world from this incredible faculty and those students and staff, and using it to really develop our local communities, saving lives across the world. So at the time that I might be dealing with the Confederate Monument, a national championship, hiring of many people, I've also got people trying to cure AIDS and solve autism, and trying to build companies that are going to lead to more jobs and create opportunities for all. So that's really what a university is like. To get that innovation made fundamental, we also have to do something that's harder than every other piece, and that is we have to innovate the way we run the university. You know, we are great. Universities are wonderful. They've been around for a long time, but they also are very siloed. And we have many things that go and are redundant or make things slow. If you want to act fast and you have to go through layers and layers and layers of bureaucracy to take a great idea and get moving on it, you know you've got to do something. So one of the real key factors that we want to face is how do we actually make sure that the last place that is slowing everybody down is the administration. Now that's going to take work. We live in a big bureaucracy. We've got lots of rules to follow. But if we do that every single time, we save people time. We also save people money. And we also are able to take those dollars and put them right back into the mission of the university. So this big goal and these grand plans require us making sure that we're able to do that. That's the kind of issue that universities across America are grappling with. How do we do that well? How do we know the things that are best done in each department and each school and the ones that are better done centrally? And quite frankly, how do we know what's best done in the individual university and what could be done well within the system? These differences between the sort of integrated and the federated groups of the states versus the federal government, it's that same issue, and we grapple with it all the time. So what I want to do very briefly is cover some of the real highlights of how we see we can meet that grand mission to be the university that serves the state and leads in the way of affordability, accessibility, and also in discovery and creation of new innovations. And this does dovetail very much with our strategic plan and then our capital campaign. Just one moment about that. Once we did the blueprint, we realized, like everyone, that when you're a public university these days, you really are getting very little, much less support from the state than you used to. The University of North Carolina still receives more support from North Carolina than most other schools and systems in the country, but it is considerably less than it used to be. So part of what we have to do is catch up to that reality, be appreciative, and use the pennies that we get very well, but also find ways to supplement that. So we have launched a campaign, $4.25 billion. It has the same sort of focus in the schools and on the things that really matter to us. And we're not halfway through, and we've raised more than half the money. So people have been incredible. I think we're getting close to $2.4 billion that has been raised. Going to get to that 4.2, and like everyone, you dream you're going to go beyond it. And we certainly need it. It is the difference between being good and being great. So an example of how this goes very directly to our strategic plan is that we're trying to raise $1 billion for aid. Now, I've talked to people at other great universities. I won't name names, but universities much, much larger than UNC Chapel Hill, ones with much larger endowments, and they don't even try to raise $1 billion. That's almost a quarter of our entire effort towards raising money for student aid. Because everything we say, everything we believe we are, depends on remaining affordable and accessible. And that's why we get this incredible student body that comes to our university each day. Now, we are fortunate compared to many other universities in the system because we already have resources. So we're able right now, the loan debt from Chapel Hill at graduation is less than half the national loan debt. And yet, we'd like to see that go even lower. We have the second highest graduation rates of all public universities in America, second to Virginia. Our 6-year graduation rate's 91.5%. So if we bring them in, we do everything possible to graduate them and get them out in 4 years. Our graduation rates are mid-80% at 4 years. We also developed a program for low-income students called the Carolina Covenant that actually meets the full need for students that come from families 2 standard deviations below the poverty level. So average income about $28,000. That's almost 14% of our student body. And unlike most places in America, when those debts are high for students, that's what makes them drop out. It's not because they can't do it or they don't want to do it. They want to do it probably more than anybody else, and they try so hard. But when debt gets high or when families call and need them, they're going to be the first to go back and support that family. That Carolina Covenant has resulted in almost a 30% increase in graduation rates for some of the most disadvantaged economically, and that we're less than 4 points apart in graduations with our student body and the rest of our students in the Covenant. Just at University Day, we announced a program that is being spearheaded with a lead gift by Erskine Bowles, Charlotte's wonderful citizen Erskine Bowles, called the Blue Sky Initiative. We love the name. But that is directed towards the students at middle income. Now, in North Carolina, middle income, the average income is about $50,000 a year. In many schools in America, those students would be considered the lowest income students, but that is the population of our state. And families, working families that are in that income between $40,000 and $80,000 a year, even with low rates, even with our ability to give them support, those students are the ones hard-pressed. They don't get the international experiences. They might not get to do the internship. Sometimes they drop out because they want their younger brother or sister, and a family can't do all 4 kids. So this is a program aimed directly at that income group. We are so excited about it. It does something for Chapel Hill that we've never had before. One more example of how I'm just so moved by what I see people rising to do was another family that gave money that they called the Red, White, and Blue Scholarship, specifically directed toward children of veterans that needed to have aid in the Covenant or potentially in the Blue Sky program. So we are reaching out, and that is a very big effort for us. You know, our admissions keep skyrocketing. And while it's great to say everybody wants to go there, it doesn't feel good to tell really good students that they can't go there. So we're also in the process of trying to figure out other ways we can continue to increase the capacity for us to educate. Programs like the business school doing its online MBA, #1 in the nation. We're going to see more students coming to us through online programs, having blended opportunities where they're sometimes on campus, sometimes off campus. That is very much a part of how we look at the future where we're going. Our first year class had students from 97 counties, 43 states, the District of Columbia, and 38 countries. Compared to most big universities in America, we have the least international students. And at some level, that's going to be something the state needs to really think about. More than half the businesses in North Carolina right now are actually owned by companies from out of the country. We want to continue to build those partnerships, and that educational outreach is wonderful. We have more international students that come to us in our graduate programs, but we've seen, unlike many other schools, our applications are actually increasing in that area. And I bet that could be true right here at UNC Charlotte. So we have that going on. We are also greatly changing the way we teach. I won't go into great details about that, but I think it is really important to know that great universities do not teach the same today as they taught 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or 20 years ago. Many things are the same. We still have a core basis in the liberal arts because we believe in that depth and breadth and critical thinking, but it's much more hands-on, it's much more outreach-based, it's much more independent learning, and a lot of that is what people consider the highest benefit teaching methods possible. We also see that that's going to continue. I think we're about 50% of our students are doing international experiences. Every time I talk to CEOs, every time, they tell us that when they hire people, they want to know that they have the international competency that they need in their companies to be able to do that kind of outreach. So that's something that we need to do, and we believe that others need to do. 97% of our students are going on to jobs in their preferred fields. But this is the really interesting statistic about that. What people think they want right now might not even exist in 3 years. I truly believe that we are seeing a real change in the job market. We all know it, but we're going to see a loss of old jobs, and we need to see an emergence of new jobs. So we need to get those students that when they graduate, they're not set for just a single position. They need to be the people that are creating the new positions, that have the skills that everybody wants as they build out, evolve, and change. Some of that change is going to create a whole new set of jobs. I saw a great conversation with Melinda Gates, and they had done a calculation about how many jobs were lost when they developed the Excel spreadsheet. And it was a pretty big number. But within 5 years, it was more than 10 to 100-fold new jobs that had been created. So I think we have to stop worrying so much about the loss of jobs that go with high tech and advanced learning and start thinking much more about the new jobs and the training that we need to owe our students and our communities to take advantage of what is on the way and what is coming. There's good stats about this state, and I think it's over 50% of the jobs just projected in the next few years are going to require post-secondary education, and a growing fraction of those require master's, PhD, professional school education. If we're going to be the knowledge economy state that we can be with the starts that we have and the assets we have, a lot of this has to be what we're thinking about. For us, a lot of that comes back down to research. We became the 5th highest federally funded research university in America just a couple weeks ago. And that number 5 is pretty incredible. I always love to do a quiz and see, can anyone guess who's above us in that number 5? Who do you think are the best funded research universities in America?
MIT. Harvard.
MIT, Harvard, no. Hopkins, number 1. Stanford? Michigan? No, not Texas. Maryland, California. Nope. Nope. NC State is an amazing powerhouse in those engineering schools, I'm going to say. See, you can't even get it because all those great schools, it's University of Washington, and then it is Chapel Hill. It's a pretty big deal. But what's a big deal about that is the result of decades of investment in a university to get buildings, to build a great faculty, and that is huge. You put NC State, Carolina, Duke, and those schools together, we are the third highest region in the country for federal investment. This is huge. Then you start bringing in our partners in Charlotte and NCCU and all those. We have a capacity here to do things that we have not thought about, but what I do say is it is really easy to lose it. So we need to invest in this because right now, Chapel Hill alone brings in $7 for every $1 the state gives it. It's over $7 billion a year is added to this economy based on that research enterprise alone. And that doesn't count the number of people served in the hospitals and all the other things that happen. So we have assets. They sit in our entire university system. And it's something that we really need to work on. So much of what we do is working on entrepreneurial programs, trying to build them out. The business school just joined together with the pharmacy school to create a whole series of new programs to launch new businesses in drug design and delivery, and especially focusing on underrepresented minorities and women leaders. They get less than about 2% of the investment money for their programs. So a lot of work like that going on, bringing these schools together, reaching out, and finding ways to really serve. We think a lot about service to the state. And I'm going to talk about that, and then I want to close my remarks a little bit about Silent Sam so we can have some questions. But, you know, we all think about this, about how we can serve. I was especially taken this year when we had Hurricane Florence. We've had these terrible, devastating hurricanes. And at one point, we were going to be a direct hit. I think Charlotte was going to be too, but it veered off. And so that gave us an opportunity to help everybody else. And we were able to put up what became the largest Red Cross center. We did it at the Friday Center. And we were able to serve almost 1,000 people over that week to come and have a place to shelter. But that kind of giving and watching the community come together around that was just a very telling and remarkable service that all of our universities can still form. Unlike most places, we didn't put it in a broken down gym. We put it in the best place we have on campus, which is the Friday Center. We had people in there, honestly, we're going back to nothing, but that moment when they were there, when they were receiving care, when their kids were there, they got to meet the basketball team, the marching band, every single person on campus wanted to come help. It was a moment when we could serve our community. And so I think I speak for all the universities when I say, and many of our universities were really suffering, that service is real for everybody. I retain faculty who could go any place in the world because they believe in that. And so I think that's something I really wanted to share with you. So what I want to do in just a couple minutes is just talk to you a little bit about what we just did yesterday, and maybe I can give a little bit of emphasis to things that I think you might have been reading. It's a very complicated story, and I think people are trying to get the facts right, but it's not always being presented in the way I think it should be, or I'd like it to be. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about it. But you know that we were given the opportunity by the Board of Governors to give a plan. And in all the time we've been here, that's the first time that we were asked and given that authority. Long details could go into that, but we aren't an entity by law that can even approach the Historical Commission as an individual freestanding university. So if they approve this plan, we'll have the opportunity to go to the Historical Commission and determine whether our plan meets that law. So that's what we're trying to do, is come up with a plan. They wanted a plan that would meet the law. And we said, we're going to stick to that. We're going to find that. And we hired an amazing crackerjack security team. We looked at every single thing you could possibly do, and we came up with what we called a 4-point plan. The importance of this is that for the last 3 years, we've been working on contextualization. And the Board of Trustees in 2015 had said, we need to build a center for education and history that takes America's oldest public university that has been around since the birth of the nation up to becoming the 5th highest research university and tell that whole story as it's lived out in our campus through slavery, emancipation, civil rights, the birth of the research university, all of that. So that was all part of it. And in our resolution, we believe that the very best thing is to include the artifacts of the statue as part, but certainly only a part of that long and storied history, and make it available for people to have training, education there, but that this center, which is being cited as $5 million, is much larger. It's a much broader enterprise, and it's one that we've been working on for a long time. It, we believe, fits the law. We think it could actually start happening if we can get people engaged. The truth is, no matter what, we're going to continue the efforts of that center because we need to be part of telling the history and engaging with the community on that. So it also included expanding that history task force. We've got many other things going on in the center of campus that we're already using to have lots of descriptions and contextualization. We had approached the Museum of History in Raleigh, and they said they couldn't take it, that they couldn't take it unless the law changed and the Historic Commission was ready to allow it. So that wasn't a pathway open to us right away. They said it would cost $2 million to put it there. And their reasoning, too, is that wherever it goes, it needs contextualization. That's what we need to do with all of these parts of our history, is not run from them, but contextualize them. So that was their idea. And then we believe, very important, that we also put in something in the place where the monument stood that could be used as a place where we could recognize and celebrate and honestly tell the story of the university in that location. So that was the four-part plan. And now it has to go to the Board of Governors. They need to determine the next steps. The Board of Trustees and I were very clear, and I'm going to say it here, that especially after we read all the security reports, we really do have a preference for it going someplace like the museum or potentially to a cemetery or other places where it could be part of a larger contextualization and would not be part of our needs for public safety, but that's not in our purview right now. We're going to continue those discussions, but we also stuck to the commission that we had, which is to develop a plan that would be allowable in the law and that we thought really would advance this long time standing plan for contextualization. So, it's all in a day's work for a university to be facing the greatest discoveries of the day, the most amazing stories of opportunity and grit and determination from our students and staff and faculty, to be reaching out to do service for tiny little communities that have no one that can help serve them, to trying to save lives in clinics and hospitals across the nation, and to deal with the issues that are present in American society. So, if you're an educator or you're a person that really believes in opportunity and access like I do, you don't choose which of those are the ones you deal with. You deal with the ones that come to you, and you find your best team and your best determination to go forward towards them. And so I think I can say, like almost anyone you would talk to at a university, that that is our mission. And it's especially the mission of the public university. We have a mission unlike a private. They don't live in our world. They don't have that same adherence to the laws, but they don't have that same fundamental mission that we live to serve the communities in which we're found. And so I love that mission. I came for that mission, and I think you're all part of that mission in being part of the Rotary. So it's great to be with you today, and why don't I open it up for some questions?
Great.
Thank you.
Questions for the Chancellor? Yes.
Is there a preference or a percentage in the admissions department for North Carolina residents?
Yes, it's 82.
Repeat that, please.
She's asked what is the admissions policy about North Carolina residents. And we have 82% of our incoming class are North Carolina residents. But if you'll let me for a second, I want to expand on that. This has really been a big part of what I've been doing since I got there, is that we've also been expanding our outreach into community colleges. I was a community college kid. I went to Ohio State. I was a college dropout. I had to pay my way through school. I went to community college, got into a university. Not that my story is so relevant, but I really understand the path of opportunity through the community colleges. And there's been a lot of work in North Carolina to make a better integration of community college and university. So we're up to about 800 students coming from community colleges, and they come in via a new program called C-STEP, well, not relatively new, where if they get accepted in the community college and they graduate as they should, they would have had all the advising and their financial aid ready so they can immediately come in. And since we put that in place, they're graduating at the same rate as other students with full financial aid. So as we go forward, sometimes some of those students come to us from out of state, so our overall level might be 81, but it still is undergraduate is really focusing on that. It's so hard to get in from out of state, and I wish we could take more because we get amazing students, and many of them have stayed right here in North Carolina and become major leaders in the country. So it's something that's really important.
Questions out there? Yes, please.
You guys are at the forefront of a lot of the traumatic brain injury
Yes.
research with the Matthew Feller Center there on campus. That's actually named for a young man that died on the football field at my high school several years after I left. But given that, what were your reactions to Larry Fedora's comments around concussions and his questioning some of the science around that just a handful of months ago?
Yes, he's asked me, how I felt when Coach Fedora talked about there not being a direct proof of CTE being associated, traumatic brain injury, with football, especially given the fact that we're one of the leaders. We're probably one of the 2 or 3 leaders in that field. The head of our arts and sciences, Dean Kevin Guskowitz, is the MacArthur Genius Award winner for his fundamental groundbreaking work on concussion. So he's asked me how I felt about it. And quite honestly, and what I said to him at the time was, what the heck were you thinking? But I'll tell you what, I have to tell you also, the reason I was so shocked is that I know he didn't think that. That football program has been more directed towards getting brain injury right. We were one of the first to take all of our doctors out of the athletics department, put them into oversight from the hospitals. There isn't a single thing going on that is remotely related to those kinds of comments. So I was really, what was going on? And so of course, and Kevin and I are talking, because again, we are this great research university. We know what is, if I had had a single doubt that he was acting in a way that was not consistent with what was important, there would have been a completely different set of questions between Bubba and Larry and I. So I think we understood that. It was very important that we go forward and tell people what's really going on, and especially reach out to families. But it was so far from the truth that I have to think sometimes that, you're under a lot of lights. I get them coming at me all the time. And I think people can be thinking through unfinished thoughts and go down a train that is not where the track they don't want to go. I believe that, in a sense, is what happened there with him. But the truth is, it's a very important, alive part of research. And I think we're going to see continuing changes in all the sports that have potential traumatic impacts. I think they're all going to be changing over the next 5 years, and our research will be part of it.
So we've got time for 2 quick questions, one here, and then Vernon to close it out.
Chancellor, thank you for being here. I got a softball question for you. You touched earlier, from a 16 system, school system as a whole, really how much collaboration is there between yourself and the other 15 chancellors, thinking somewhat logically that you and Dr. Woodson probably lead that charge, being the 2 largest?
Well, for me, very directly, Randy and Vincent from Duke and I meet all the time. And we have so many programs going. We would all tell you that every one of us is better because the other exists. We developed the biomedical engineering program together with State. We have joint programs with Duke. The 3 of us meet all the time because we know we hold the key to each other's success. We also do reach out. We've got a lot of programs going here in Charlotte, including medical programs. We've got programs in Asheville where we do pharmacy. So many of them exist. And those usually come through the schools. So the medical school, very active here, active with ECU. Our programs in farm, so it's a lot more professional school-based, nursing, things like that. So we work very well. But the chancellor here took on a real effort when he was spearheading the talk with the legislature all about athletes. So we get together on issues and talk a lot, on programs, proximity matters, and shared interest. But I think the mutual respect, at least I have and I see, is actually pretty extraordinary because systems aren't always that way. Margaret Spellings, Tom Ross did a great job of bringing people together, and I think Bill Roper's going to be wonderful. But there's a real sense of understanding of shared and different mission. That's what I think.
Vernon?
I was very happy to hear that applications for the foreign citizen shuttle is up. That is not as been shared with many schools around the
I know.
country over the last couple of years. Could you share with us the benefits to the schools and to our communities of inviting foreign students and inviting them to stay after they graduate?
Yes, he's asked me, what are some of the benefits you get of having more international students, not only in our schools, but staying to graduate? Well, I'm going to step back and go, probably everyone here has an immigrant, not everyone, but most of us probably have immigrants not very far in our history. My grandparents came from Albania. My dad, we all have that, and came, stayed, and I think they have been part of what makes America such a special and vibrant culture. So I think we all know that. We also know that students that want to study, the greatest brain drain is still coming from out to us. And there is no doubt that our great Nobel Prize winners, our great research, all those benefit from people from outside. So to think that we are going to be great if we do not allow that continued infusion at the research we've done would be remiss. But now we've moved to undergraduate students. It used to be you primarily went for graduate students. Undergraduates from other countries are coming. And, I think that is really important because they stay. What we tend to see is that they come from countries where the country wants that interaction. And if you follow their relationships, they usually are ambassadors for good back in their home country. England used to be great at this. People would train at Oxford and Cambridge, and they became the leaders in virtually every country they ever went through. So they had built this goodwill, this cultural experience from people going back. But we get a lot of it from people coming and staying and helping us link with those other countries, develop opportunities. I mean, there are markets that have not been touched in many parts of the country that you just can't go over there by yourself without having that connection. So I think of many things like that, as well as just the way it enriches the educational experience. There is nothing that our students want when they come that says they want to go sit in a room with someone that did exactly what they did their entire life growing up. They all come, they all say, now they do all still congregate to some extent like that, but that's what they want, and we know that's what builds a great educational and community spirit. So I think all of those things are true for students that come from out of the country. So thank you.
Let's give Chancellor Folt another big round of applause. Thank you for coming. We very much appreciate you coming to visit with us in Charlotte. So pay attention to this now. We are not meeting here next week. So if you show up, you may have a good time, but it's going to be by yourself. We'll be at Covenant Presbyterian Church in Dilworth in the Fellowship Hall. And we look forward to seeing you then. It's Ellie Clary production, How I Got Where I'm At, and we look forward to seeing you there. We're adjourned. Thank you.